That's okay though. For being so young, you're very, very smart. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther. I'm a flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther. I'm a flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther. I'm a flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther. I'm a flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther.
That's okay though. For being so young, you're very, very smart. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther.
For sound bites. This is awesome.
I see a black screen.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, the song's over. Welcome to Anti-Religious Scripture Study with Karen B. and Just Jack. Oh, there it goes. But I have a big gray blob on top of it. Why?
That's because I got other stuff open on top of it. It does
there
look
it
better
goes.
now.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Sorry, guys.
So anyway, welcome to Anti-Religious Scripture Study with Karen B and Just Jack. And you can't really see us on screen right now, but today we are not doing a chapter translation like we usually do. Today we are doing a MOED update. So Jack has a document here that talks about what is it? It talks about what MOED is, right?
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
just going to tell us all about MOED?
Uh, yeah. I mean, that's going to be part of it. It's going to be review because I've hit it many times. And I've probably hit Moedim on this channel recently for unleavened bread and Passover, but another one has come up starting tomorrow, which is called Shuvuot. So I figured we could quickly go over MOED and talk about the one that's coming up specifically because it's, time sensitive.
All right.
And I'll read the disclaimer just because, we go against format here. Just Jack's disclaimer to the religious. If you believe it's wrong to study the scripture outside of your religion or denomination, if you believe your religious leaders or church fathers are incapable of having inherited anti-scriptural traditions of men, if you've already made up your mind about scripture, including the scripture shouldn't be studied at all, then this stream is not for you. To others, if you are open-minded to others' opinions, if you haven't made up your mind about scripture, if you've been turned off to religion but believe there's truth in scripture that may have been changed or hidden by religion, if you live according to scripture and like to dig in and discover more, then this stream is for you. We are looking at scripture in the original language using concordances or dictionaries for root words as well as context from a non-religion perspective. We will as well have life experience discussion. We are not here to argue with others about theology or doctrine by the traditions of men, including Catholicism, Christianity, or Judaism. We will be discussing the importance of origins and show how religions contradict the scriptures.
All right. And
All
then
right.
before we get into this, do you want to go over what Pharaoh means? That question in chat that we started discussing right before we actually went
Yeah.
live and everyone could hear us. So I don't forget that question at the end.
Yeah, I'm not saying it as a matter of fact. I just find it interesting that if you break down Pharaoh into Hebrew characters, it's basically Pe means mouth and Ra is evil, dysfunction, right? So Pharaoh could be broken down in Hebrew as the mouth of dysfunction. So I find that funny, ironic, whatever you want to call it.
And that's from the Hebrew perspective, and
Correct.
the Egyptian perspective is what?
I mean, Pharaoh is just like,
Leader?
master god. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like a king god, whatever you want to call him.
Okay.
That's their perspective.
Right. Okay, cool. There you go. Cheers, any word.
All right, so I'm guessing you can see my spreadsheet, yes?
Yes, they can see
Okay.
what you're sharing with me. Everybody sees
Okay, awesome. All right, so I have this spreadsheet available. You can email me, justjackflatearth@gmail.com, and I can send it to you. It's a breakdown of everything that I could, and this is actually a short summary, even though it's 5 pages long. There's a lot more details when you dig into it throughout the scripture, but I just hit the important bullet points that you need to know as far as living a Torah-only calendar, which is why I called it Torah calendar. All right. So first things first is in Bereshit, aka Genesis, chapter 1. It says, and they speak Elohim, exist from light or light sources in the shaped overlay, which is the Rakia, the firmament. The Shemayim of the unseen existences do separate in between the Yom and between the Lila. Exist they do for benchmarks and for appointments and for Yoms, which is the daylight times, and for the repeats. Now, repeats, I say because they have it as years, but it actually is from this root right here. That is a folding, literally or figuratively, a duplicate by implication to change form, to do again, alter, repeat, and return. So these repeats are any repeats of the lights in the sky.
because they all have patterns.
Correct. And exist they do, from the light sources in the Rakia, the Shemayim, to light on the arets. Okay, so the lights exist only for those on the arets, which is why I think it's improbable to get too high of an elevation and, keep track of the stars.
Well, this,
We've
I
seen
think,
that.
is why some of the astronauts say that you can't see stars when you go
Exactly.
way up high.
Exactly. Because it's for the arets. Like you can't, you can't do celestial navigation once you get above a certain altitude.
Yeah, and
So,
even those high altitude balloons, it's like you don't really ever see stars hardly in
yeah,
the video, right? Because they get so high, it's like you don't see them anymore.
yeah. So, yeah, I always find that funny that, this is stuff that, you know, all through growing up and reading Genesis, I would have never understood that these lights specifically exist in the Shemayim, meaning the unseen existence. They don't exist in the firmament. Okay, they exist in the they project from Rakia into our unseen existence,
Right.
and they manifest before our eyes. So,
Holographs.
right. So your sun is your sun, my sun's my sun, your moon is your moon, my moon's my moon, and so on.
Hmm.
Okay. And exist affirm it, and it was so, right? And then exist affirm, and they do make Elohim, the duplicate light sources, the greats from the light source, great to rule the Yom, and from the light the less to rule the Lila, day and night,
Hmm.
and action also to the stars. And continue Elohim in the shaped overlay, that's the Rakia, the Shemayim to light on the arets. So again, it breaks it down there. It's in the shaped overlay in the Shemayim. So it's from the Rakia projected into the Shemayim, where we see them, to the light on the arets, and to rule in Yom and in Lila, and to separate between the light and between the dark, and they see Elohim, because that functions, and exists mingled darkness, and exists breaking forth seen light, Yom forth. Okay. This is an important thing to know as far as when it speaks of the first month, and it's the term called Aviv. In the King James Version, it gets translated into all sorts of stuff because I think they're purposely trying to hide it, because it's a important agricultural term. That's when the barley is mature enough to harvest and roast. Aviv's first mention is during the flaming hail in Mitzrayim, aka Egypt,
Hmm.
and the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was Aviv, translated as in the head or in the ear, and the flax was in the bud. Aviv barley, it's brittle, destroyed by hail, ripening lighten in color, not darken, because in the Strong's version of the translation, it says it's a dark green color. It's the opposite. It's actually when it lightens, when it's harvestable. You can't harvest it when it's green. It's like it's just grass then. It's not grain.
Hmm.
Roastable seed. It's harvest ready, bowing with the grain. Some people use this as a symbology. It becomes humbled and it bows down. Where there's things that is called chaff, which is empty grain stalks. So the empty-headed stand proud and tall, but the humble bow down. Anyway, harvest ready, 2 to 3 weeks for the first fruit offering. So the beginning of the year, you offer a first fruit offering. If the barley's not harvestable, how do you offer it as an offering? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, there's the empty-headed stand tall. KJV and other translations, Aviv translated as green ears of corn and grain. So, yeah, it's actually the Aviv new moon, the renewed moon, which is called Chodesh. This is the beginning of months for you, the first renewed moon of the year for you, and that's that Chodesh again.
Hmm.
Today you are going out in the Chodesh Aviv. So this is how you recognize the beginning of months. All right, so now I'm going to scroll through this because this is Passover stuff. We're past Passover. And now we're getting into Shavuot. Tomorrow is Shavuot because it's a 50 count, or 7 sevens and a day, from the first fruit offering. The first fruit offering is done on the morrow after the Sabbath, meaning the first day of the week, otherwise known as the hijacked name of sun god, Sunday. But on the morrow after the Sabbath, during unleavened bread, you make your offering, and then you count this, then you count this 7 Sabbaths or 7 sevens for this is called the first fruit. Okay, so this is all spring harvest time. So some things, when they're harvestable in spring, not everything is harvestable within the first week of spring. Some things take another week and another 2 weeks and so on.
Right.
So within these first 7 weeks, you're bringing the offerings of the first fruits. Okay. Shavuot can mean sevens, weeks, or oaths. So the Shavua is the same word where we get Shabbat, right? Shava, 7, week. All of these are same root word, including oath. Like if I make a promise, this is the time to make the promise, is like, making an oath, the Feast of Oaths. Okay, so Exodus 19. In the 3rd month, now I highlighted 3rd month because this is the 4th day of the 3rd month, according to my calendar today. And it says in the 3rd month, and it doesn't say the date, just the month, after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, in this day they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and I'm sure people have heard of Mount Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
For they set out from Rephidim into the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain. And Moshe went up to Elohim, and Jehovah called him from the mountain, saying, "This is what you're to say to the house of Yaakov, and declare to the children of Israel, you have seen what I've done to the Mitzrites, aka Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples," which is an oath. "For all the earth is mine. And you shall be a reign of priests and a set-apart nation. These are the words which you speak to the children of Israel." And Moshe came and called for the elders of the people, and set before them all these words which Jehovah had commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, "All that Jehovah has spoken we shall do." So then Moshe brought the words of the people back to Jehovah, which is another oath. So Yah makes an oath to the people. If you hear and guard his voice and his covenant, his contract, that you'll be the protected treasure. And the people agreed by all saying at one time, "All that Jehovah has spoken we shall do." So it's agreement to the oath. And if people say, "Okay, well, that's for Israel, that's for Jacob, blah, 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 blah," then all you have to do is go up here and Exodus 12:49, when the calendar was given and the Moedim were given, it says there is one Torah both for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. So it doesn't matter if you're born into Israel or you just join with the Creator. Okay?
Okay.
And also, it shall be a sign on your hand and as a reminder between your eyes. We went over this for unleavened bread. Like this should stand out to some people that stare at revelations really hard. It shall be as a sign on your hand and as a reminder between your eyes. These Moedim. Okay?
Awesome.
All right. 3 times a year you come up. Matzot, Shavuot, and Sukkot. There's this thing that's going around in people who are starting to look at the scripture rather than doing religion. And then there's different teachings out there, like the 7 feasts of the Lord. Well, number one, if you go through the collection of Moedim in Leviticus 23, you're not going to count 7. You're going to count more or less depending on how you organize them. It's the same thing as the 10 Commandments thing. If you go to Exodus 20, you try to count 10 Commandments, you're not going to get there except for if you've already memorized the list, right? So you've already separated it into columns that you've given it. So what I've done is I've looked at where it talks about the Moedim, and there's more a point to point out the 3 rather than the 7. So, all right, Exodus 23. "And all that I said that you take heed, make no mention of the name of other mighty ones like God and Baal." Anyway, "Let it not be heard from your mouth. 3 times a year to observe a festival to me." And this is that word chag. that we looked at just recently, like let them go into the wilderness to have a festival, right? That chag is that, spinning, dancing around, maybe having a little something to drink, causing some spins,
Mm-hmm.
So this is that kind of festival. It's like, it's party time, right? Guard the festival of unleavened bread, matzot. 7 days your tea unleavened bread, as I commanded you, in the appointed time in the renewed moon of Aviv. There, Aviv shows up again. It's very obvious that he wants us to keep track of this Aviv thing.
So what does Aviv mean again?
Aviv is that month, which the barley is Aviv. Aviv is the agricultural term that means it's harvestable and roastable.
Okay.
Right? So that's why it's important, we have the lights in the sky that tell us about the year,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have the agricultural things. There's other verses, which we're not going to get into today, but there's other verses that talks about in the springtime where there's migrations, right? So if these migratories are happening, then it's also, approaching that time. So beyond that next renewed moon will be the beginning of the year. All right?
All right.
For in it you came out of Mitzrayim. You do not appear before me empty-handed. In other words, don't just show up, right? Bring something. And the festival of harvest, which is the second MOED, which is called Shuvuot, 7 weeks os, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field. So remember, it's 7 Sabbaths, so 7 sevens is first fruits. And the festival of ingathering, Sukkot, which is temporary shelters made from thickets. And the outgoing of the year, which you gathered in the fruit of the labors of the field. 3 times a year, all your males are to report to the Master Yehovah. Appear. All right. So here again, Deuteronomy 16. Guard. This word is translated as keep in King James Version, and when we think keep, it's like you take something and then you hold it and it's yours. But this keep, from Old English, is actually a keep of like a castle. So you really protect it. You guard it. Okay. So guard the renewed moon of the Aviv. Obviously, again, very important when you're talking about the calendar. And then this is talking about the whole 3 Moedim. But as far as Shavuot goes, count 7 weeks for yourselves. Begin to count 7 weeks from the time that you put the sickle to the grain. That's the first fruit offering. And you shall perform the festival party of weeks to Yehovah your Elohim according to the voluntary offering of your hand. That's different from all the other offerings. All the other offerings, it tells you how much you bring, what type you bring, how much oil, how much wine, how much bread, how much grain. But this is saying whatever you feel, that you offer to the Creator, because you're expecting it to be blessed, basically. Which you give as Yehovah your Elohim blesses you, and you shall rejoice before Yehovah your Elohim, and let your son and your daughter, your male servant and female servant, the Levite who is within your gates, and the stranger and the fatherless, and the widows who in your midst. Okay, so it's saying that you take care of those who can't provide for themselves during these times, at the place where Yehovah your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell. And you shall remember that you were a slave in Mitzrayim, and you shall guard and do these laws. So this is all about remembering the freedom from slavery. And remember, when we describe the slavery of Egypt, it very much compares to the slavery of America.
Right. Yes.
It's free slavery, which free slavery ends up into being total slavery, where you're working only for quote unquote Pharaoh.
Right. Which is what most people are doing these days.
Right. 3 times a year, the festival of Matzot, Shavuot, and Sukkot. All right. As far as tithe is that 10% that you put away from all your income to give to the widows, orphans, those in need, and for the Moedim, which I was never taught any of this in church. Tithe is not supposed to be for the church. It's supposed to be for taking care of others and for the Moedim. Deuteronomy 14. When the way is too long for you, so that you're not able to bring the tithe, because tithe was usually carrying lots of grain or produce or whatever, or when the place where Yehovah your Elohim chooses to put his name is too far from you, when Jehovah your Elohim is blessing you, then you shall give it in silver. So you trade it for silver. And you shall take that silver in your hand and go to the place which Jehovah your Elohim chooses, and you shall use that silver for whatever your being desires, for cattle, for sheep, for wine, or for strong drink, whatever your being desires. And you shall eat there before Jehovah your Elohim, and you shall rejoice, you and your household. You better rejoice. You better have a party.
There you go.
How dare you if you don't? But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that, is completely missed. Like, I've always heard that keeping the commands is grievous. Like, oh yes, it's such a horrible command to keep a party. Like, you have to party 3 times a year.
Right.
It's absolutely necessary. And yeah, like I said, I got this spreadsheet for anyone who wants it, and I'm going to close this, so now they're going to see my big head. Right?
Probably, yeah.
And this is one of the hats that I'm making to bring to Flattowerfest. Space, like, sky vacuum, space. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
All right. Let's see.
So I got a huge head now, right?
Yeah, I can turn it off. Oh, wait, no, it's still there. It's
Oh, no.
still there.
Sorry for y'all having to look at my big head.
Yeah, but it's not that big of a deal. Anyway, oops. Any questions in chat? We'll just take a quick look and see if, whoops, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, I was just looking through chat myself. Fourth day, third month, episode 43. How about that? That is interesting.
Oh yeah, so you did see the new moon on the 1st. It was like barely visible. It was like 1% on the
Yeah, when
that
we
evening.
left your house, it was the evening of the first day, and we saw it on the way home.
That's funny.
So that was really cool.
I was wondering if you guys were going to.
Yeah, Carolyn's like, look, there's the new moon. I'm like, yep. It's good. Tithing was only for the church as far as the church taught. Yep. F that vacuum nonsense. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's a wrap.
Yeah.
Why unleavened? That's a whole nother teaching, a whole nother discussion. I think I talked about it a little bit, 7 weeks ago. But basically, if you're the whole idea, hold on one second. The whole idea of the whole idea of non-leavening during leaving Egypt was an obvious thing. Like, you don't have time to let the bread rise. You're going to be leaving tonight. You got to pack your stuff, right? But there is some symbology to it in that the whole leavening process was actually started by the Egyptians. So it's like, basically removing yourself from the culture that enslaves you by, nomadic people, when they make bread, they just take the grain and the water and they make a mash out of it and they smash it and they put it next to a fire and then it cooks, right? So there's no leavening process. There's no waiting for it to leaven. So I think it's about transitioning out of the culture that you're a slave of. Like for me, when I started learning about the Torah, I don't do a lot of things like the rest of the American culture does. I'm completely separated from that culture. And it's hard for people to understand, because when I say things like, I don't want to get into too many discussions here. Okay, let's just say something simple, like the way that I think that my daughter shouldn't cut her hair because she's a female. Okay, that has nothing to do with American culture. that's more of a Hebraic culture perspective. So there's things like that. So no yeast. What about other methods? Some people like use eggs because eggs will fluff things up. I mean, it's basically like if you're planning for this thing to come up, you're gonna figure things out. Let's put it that way. It's just like Sabbath, right? So I don't do any cooking on Sabbath because you're supposed to do all your preparations on the 6th day and carry it over to the 7th day. So they're like, well, how can you do that? Do you use a microwave? And I'm like, no, I don't use a microwave ever. Like 365 days a year, I never use a microwave.
Right.
But, like we do salads, we do subs, we do
cold leftovers.
Carolyn does this overnight. It's basically like cold brewing for oatmeal, where she adds like flavoring to it, and then in the morning it's all soft and ready, and hard boiled eggs, and I eat good on Shabbat. I eat probably more on Shabbat than any other day because I'm grazing because because you're
not doing anything
I'm
else.
resting. I'm chilling. Yeah. So yeah, I probably eat more on Shabbat than any other day. But I mean, these things, there's not such staunch rules about what's to be done or not done. It's just, you don't work, you don't let anybody else work for you. And as far as like the unleavened bread thing, you just make sure that, you check your labels and don't have any yeast or leavening in your house during that week. It's not a big deal. Yeah, loopholes getting around the Sabbath. Yep. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, I've met plenty of loophole believers, and I actually call them that because they're like, how can I get out of keeping this command rather than what can I do to make this command easier? So yeah, I rather just I'm going to put my best effort because I know the experience I have when I put my best effort, when I actually try to live the best way I can according to Scripture. It's always a very good experience. There's a lot of extra religious stuff in these holidays, like for like Shavuot right now. I think I think the Jews like do a lot of like deep frying today or something. I don't know. There's different religious stuff that you can add to it, but I prefer not to. It's just a day of partying, and this is tomorrow, not today, but it's like a day of partying and, hanging out with family and friends. And, it's kind of like if you think about when I was about to say making oaths, it's kind of like New Year's resolution, right? You make an oath. Like this year, it's going to be this for me or whatever, kind of making an oath. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. We also read about where I was at there, Exodus 19. That's when they went to the mountain in the 3rd month. And I find that interesting that it just mentions 3rd month rather than days, because in previous chapters, it talks about like in the 2nd month on the 14th day or et cetera, whatever, where this is just specifically talking at the 3rd month. And it doesn't say in the scriptures that Shavuot is about gathering at the mountain, but you can see the correlation of the 7 Sabbaths. So 7 weeks from unleavened bread, you're always in the beginning of the 3rd month. So that's convenient. It's kind of like, you have to search these things out. Like the Creator wants you to figure it out,
Yeah.
Like you're not supposed to just blindly sit in a pew and listen to some dude tell you what it is.
In other words, don't let yourself be spoon-fed.
Right.
You don't want to be spoon-fed.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to investigate these things for yourself. Like, I don't just tell you Shavuot is this. I actually show you all the verses that I reference to get to where I'm at. That's not, but you got to be careful of that too, because sometimes they'll do like what's called soundbite theology, where they'll take a verse out of this book and a verse out of that book and a verse out of that book and mash them together and make a new rule. So got to be careful of that stuff too.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to, use that spreadsheet as a study tool, please email me, justjackflatearth@gmail.com. All right, let's see what else we have here. 3 times a year.
Yeah.
All right, that looks good. Looks like we're wrapped up.
All right. Awesome. Cool.
All right, guys.
Thanks.
Stay flat.
Yes, thanks for being here for another episode of Anti-Religious Scripture Study with Karen B and Just Jack, and for joining us for today's MOED update. All right.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, and we will be back again next week. All right.